Hello and welcome to MCTV Sports. I'm Connor Hall.
And I'm Robert D. Felice. Tonight, we will be discussing Colin Kaepernick's comeback, NCAA drama, and early opinions of the NBA season. So let's get right to it. With the NFL recently announcing that they will be hosting a workout for Colin Kaepernick, including an on-field workout as well as an interview, inviting all NFL scouts to come, do you think he will make it back to a team?
I think this time around he definitely will. I know that there's a number of teams interested in attending, although it's not clear which ones actually will. Right now, I know that the Bengals are the favorite to land him, but I think teams like the Steelers, they could be in position for a new starting quarterback depending on how Big Ben's health turns out for the future years. I know that the Cowboys were interested in signing him as a backup, and maybe even the Patriots, which would kind of be an interesting headline. You know that they just had Antonio Brown. He didn't work out there, so it'd be interesting to see how somebody like Colin Kaepernick, with all the drama and media attention that he gets, if he'll work out there.
For sure. The other team that was interested in him as well was the Broncos, with Joe Flacco being injured. I think at this point, with all the work he's put in the past 3 years, being out of the season, being out of the league, that there's no way that you can deny his talent and his determination, with all drama aside.
Yeah, I think he definitely, like you said, all drama aside, he can be a starting quarterback in the NFL. We've seen his play in the past with the 49ers and what he did there. I just think the media and drama has gotten the best of him. But you can't look at some of the NFL quarterbacks that are playing right now and say, truthfully, that he's not better than some of them. So I think he should definitely deserve a chance this time.
For sure. So moving ahead a little bit, it's to that point in the NFL season where we can kind of start formulating what we think the playoff picture is starting to look like to us. The top seeds, ironically, are the ones that are still a little bit unclear. Will the Patriots or the Ravens take the 1 seed in the AFC? Will the 49ers or perhaps another team like the Seahawks take the top seed in the NFC? What do you think on that?
I think the Ravens are definitely making a strong case. I mean, they beat the Patriots at home. Can they do that in the playoffs? More than likely on the road, I'm not sure. But I think it's either going to be Patriots or Ravens in the AFC. But then the NFC is wide open. I think that there's a number of teams that can contend for the Super Bowl coming out of there. I mean, you got the 49ers, you have the Seahawks, the Packers, the Rams are in the picture, the Cowboys still. You can't count out the Eagles yet. So I think there's the Vikings. I think there's a solid 5 or 6 teams in the NFC that can definitely make a run at the Super Bowl. But I'm really interested to see how the Patriots and Ravens duel this out. I know that the Ravens have a little bit easier of a schedule, but I know that the Patriots still have a game up on them. So I think that'll be a big component of that playoff matchup if they make it to the championship game where that game's played. So these next couple games are going to be a big picture of that.
For sure. When it comes to the Ravens, one of the interesting things that we had talked about was that Lamar Jackson, with his young age and being agile as he is and making this huge kind of what looks to be a playoff run, it kind of reminds us of who we were just talking about in Colin Kaepernick, with kind of similar talents in that sense. So very interesting to see how that plays out, being that Colin Kaepernick was able to lead them to a Super Bowl.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be fun no matter what happens. I mean, every team, might be the most wide open it's been in a while. I mean, I think we can say strongly that there's 8 or 9 teams that have the potential to reach the Super Bowl, so it should be good.
What team do you think could make the biggest push comeback? That season's not looking so good so far, but could definitely come back and possibly get a playoff berth.
I'm going to have to say the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, they are 5-4. We saw what their defense can do against the Rams last week, and their schedule isn't that tough on the back end. They play the Browns twice. Those are going to be close divisional games, but then they play the Cardinals, the Bengals, and the Jets. So those are 3 games that they should win. And I know right now they're in a wild card spot, depending on how other games work out. But I think they can definitely win at least 4 or 5 of their remaining games, and that should be good enough to get them a playoff spot.
For sure, for sure. Now on the tail end of it, teams that aren't so much looking at a playoff type of picture, more looking at kind of where they're going to fit in the draft board. It kind of seems that Cincy, being the only team left that hasn't won a game, that they'll most likely have the number 1 pick unless something changes as the season progresses. So with that being said, and with Andy Dalton kind of in the shape that he is in and not performing as much, it does appear that they'll be looking for a quarterback. So do you think for Cincy the better move is Tua, or do you think the better move is Burrow?
I think you can't look at what Joe Burrow did against Alabama, in Alabama, and say that he's not the answer for them. I think his pocket passing ability and how he manages the game is ready to compete in the NFL. And I'm shocked that we didn't really see that at the beginning of the year. Like, he wasn't that high on many people's draft boards, but I mean, he pretty much had a perfect game last game. So, and he's done that all season. They've beaten I think they've beaten 4 top 25 teams. So he's proved that he can do it with the best of them. And I just think his ability will lead him to be probably the number 1 overall pick.
For sure. The beginning end of the season, kind of the joke was tanking for Tua, and that kind of seemed to be the story of the Dolphins and the Bengals type of season of who was going to get Tua. But with the season that Burrow's starting to have, and with Tua's health starting to come a little bit into question, I definitely agree that Burrow seems to be the go-to, but no doubt that Tua will definitely go in at least top 10. So kind of moving forward now that we were talking about the NCAA and we were talking about Bama versus LSU a little bit, I think with the loss to LSU, it really does kind of tell a lot about Alabama's football team and who they really are. Looking back at the season so far, they haven't played very hard teams. They've only played 2 ranked teams, one of which isn't even ranked anymore, Ole Miss, and LSU, and they lost to LSU. Mm-hmm. So when facing a real challenge, they kind of crumbled a little bit. They did make a comeback towards the end of the game, but it truly showed that, is Bama really as good as we thought they are?
I think talent-wise, it's hard to keep them out of the top 4. I mean, collectively, I think they're one of the top 4 teams in college football. But like you said, they haven't played anybody good, and when they have, they lost. So for me, it's hard to keep them out of the picture because I think resume aside, everything else aside, you have to look at who the best 4 teams are, and I think Bama's one of them. But it'll be interesting to see what the committee does. I mean, there's a lot of teams like Oregon and Minnesota and a lot of teams that have 1 loss that have an argument to get in. But I'm interested to see what they're going to do with Bama. Do you think they should be in?
I don't know. I mean, with teams with LSU, Ohio State, Clemson, Georgia, all these kind of teams that have faced a challenge and proved to be able to handle that challenge, it kind of shows that maybe Bama might miss the playoffs this year. And can the clout of Bama really just carry them into it in the eyes of the committee and everything like that? So I'm not too certain about it. I think if they close out the season, which their only other hard game would be Auburn at the end of the season. So if they can close out the season strong, then maybe an argument can be made for them. But I think Auburn will definitely be a telltale sign for them. On the lines of the NCAA, with the recent news of NCAA cracking on players and kind of suspending players, with Ohio State's defensive end Chase Young being suspended, and Memphis basketball's player James Weissman being suspended for financial assistance is what they called it. What is your take on that and how the NCAA is handling it?
I honestly think it's a complete joke by the NCAA, honestly. Chase Young, he accepted money to bring his girlfriend to the Rose Bowl. Yeah, you can't really accept money, but what it comes down to is, does that affect how he played on the field or how he was recruited or anything? And the answer is no. So I just think it's lucky for him. He's a good enough talent where he's going to go probably top 3 regardless of what happens with this. And it just came out today that he's only suspended for 1 more game. So really, it's not that big of a deal. But to think that he was even punished for this in general, I think's a little bit of a joke.
And the same could be said about James Weissman, that he was given money by Penny Hardaway, who was his AAU coach, so they could help move his family into Memphis. And it was something like $1,600 or something like that.
Yeah.
A very, very small amount of money in the grand scheme of everything. And like you said, does that really influence him and help him and give him an unfair advantage over anyone else in the NCAA playing basketball? I don't think so. I think it's the NCAA trying to show their iron fist and trying to prove that there's some big, tough association that can do what they want. And I think it's really shining a light on them and kind of who they truly are. And I think it's starting to cause for a call to change within the NCAA. Definitely. And very interested to see how that plays out.
Yeah, the thing with Wiseman is he was given that money when Penny Hardaway wasn't even signed to be the Memphis coach yet. So it had no affiliation whatsoever with the NCAA. It just happened to be, it was last year, and or maybe 2 years ago, but that guy ended up being his coach in college. So I think with that situation, it's tough. And reports have come out saying that Wiseman didn't even know that the money was received by his parents. So I think it's a tough situation for Wiseman. But I give a lot of props to Memphis for still playing him, because at the end of the day, the NCAA is in the police department, and they can't force them to not play him. I mean, this hasn't gone to court or anything yet. So I give a lot of props to Memphis for still playing him.
For sure, for sure. Kind of hopping on the segue a little bit, moving along into the NBA with the first few games being played by each team. It's fair to say they can start making a few assumptions about a few teams. The Celtics kind of came off really, really strong. It was expected that they would have a good season. I think how well they're doing is a bit of a shock to everyone, being
Definitely.
that they have the best record within the league, 8-1 right now, I believe. Might be 9-1 at this point. But having the best league within the NBA, and the flip side of that, the Warriors having the tied for worst record in the NBA. I think there definitely been some shocks in the season so far.
Yeah, definitely. And the Celtics, I think Kemba Walker was a big piece for them. I think Kyrie, he's a arguably top 5 talent in the NBA, but I think his play style doesn't really support what the Celtics were going for and what Brad Stevens goes for, but I think Kemba does. So a lot of people have been talking about it being a two-headed race in the East with Sixers and the Bucks. But I think the Celtics, if they keep playing like this, I mean, Jaylen Brown's a beast defensively. He's certainly earning that contract that he just signed. But if they play like this with the coaching staff that they have, and they're getting more experience, so I think that they can definitely be a force to reckon with. And like you said, the Warriors, they've had some key injuries. It hurts when your starting point guard goes down, but you would think you'd have the pieces to kind of build around that and get more than 2 wins. I mean, they're competing with the New York Knicks right now for the worst record, so I think that's a little sad, but they have been injury plagued, so I think that they might be able to turn it around depending on how early Steph comes back.
For sure. I mean, there has even been talks about Steph not coming back at all this season.
Yeah.
And I think that really depends on how the Warriors progress. That I think it's going to be up to Steve Kerr and the medical staff to say, is it really worth them at this point to bring him back in the season, or give him more time to recover, give him more time to kind of bring it back. But when you really think about the struggles that the Warriors are facing, Draymond Green is the only player left of the starting lineup from last year's finals, with Kevin Durant leaving, with Steph Curry being injured, with Klay Thompson being injured. That it is very hard, and all of that happening kind of all at the same time to kind of make that adjustment. It is a lot, so it is kind of shocking. It is kind of surprising, but I think it's an adjustment that needs to be made. And for a professional team, you're kind of left with that situation of, it's a bad spot, but we got to do something about this. Yeah,
definitely. And I think it's too soon to call their dynasty over. I mean, starting next year, they're going to have Klay Thompson back. We don't know if he's going to be 100% after his injury. They're going to possibly have D'Angelo Russell still if he's not gone. They're going to have Steph Curry, and they're going to have Draymond Green. And I think those pieces themselves, I mean, that's what got them to 72 wins to start with. So I think they're kind of back at the beginning of the dynasty. But I don't think it's over. They're definitely not going to be as dominant because there's so many teams like the Lakers and the Clippers and the Nuggets in the West that can compete with them now. But I think they're still going to be contenders next year, definitely.
For sure, for sure. Now, kind of speaking in the light of the load management that has kind of come about recently with Kawhi Leonard, and how the team is limiting how much he is actually playing in order to try to keep him healthy and try to keep him fresh on his feet and kind of just not play him in what they see as key games. What is your opinion on load management?
I'm not a big fan of it at all. I think it's actually a joke, to be honest. Like, Kawhi Leonard, obviously he's a top 3 talent in the NBA, but if you want to be considered that, you have to play when it matters. And I know it's early in the season, but he's already sat out 2 games for load management. One of them was a primetime game on national television against the Bucks, who are another finals contender this year. So I can't, Kobe Bryant, he tore his Achilles, and he had to be dragged off the court. Michael Jordan had the flu, he still played. And to see these stars missing games just because they want to, especially Kawhi Leonard, I think it's kind of a joke, honestly. And it'll be interesting to see if this continues because, obviously, Kawhi, he doesn't really care what the media thinks. So I don't think anything that anybody's saying is going to get to him. But I personally just don't agree with it.
I agree with you. I really hope it doesn't become a trend within the league. At the end of the day, you're getting paid to do a job.
Yeah.
And so for you to get paid to just sit there and not do your job seems a little bit ridiculous to me. And there's no other job besides professional sports that kind of allows you to do that, to just kind of
Definitely.
sit back and not do your job for that day just because you don't feel like it. You want to get a little bit healthier, and you just kind of, not today. I don't feel like performing today. It's just not my day today. So I really hope it doesn't become a trend. I hope that with the fine that the NBA laid on the Clippers, it kind of sends a tone to the rest of the league that, hey, we're not going to accept this. This is not okay, that this can't happen.
And ultimately, clearly he doesn't care about personal accolades because, he's moved teams so much. He barely speaks to the media at all. So, but it'll be interesting. Come down the line, are you going to give the MVP to somebody like Giannis, who's out there every night, or do you give the MVP to Kawhi, who's clearly hasn't shown that he doesn't care about the regular season games? And I get where his mind is. He wants to stay healthy. He's been injury prone in the past, and he could be focusing on the playoffs when it really matters. But do you think that could affect MVP voting, or because it comes a point where it could even implement what seed they're getting in the playoffs?
Definitely. I think it's definitely a bad look for the team, being that he was brought into the team hoping to be some sort of a leadership figure, whether it was leading by example or actually speaking out, which doesn't usually seem to be Kawhi's strong suit. He just kind of plays and people follow behind him. So when you're trying to run a team and you're trying to execute as a team and you don't have that huge piece of your team so much, it definitely will affect where your team lies come the end of the season, come playoff seeding and everything like that. And like you said, when you're looking at someone like Giannis, who played the season straight through, versus Kawhi, who sat out maybe 10, 15 games, is he really the most valuable player then? Yeah. So if your team can be successful for those 15 games that you're not playing, are you really the most valuable player within the league? Or you take someone like Giannis, that remove Giannis from the Bucks, how good are the Bucks?
Exactly. And, that's a good argument because with Paul George on the team, it's not really certain. Yeah, if Kawhi Leonard misses a game, they might not miss a beat because they have so many other pieces around him. And my main problem with it is he's not missing games against teams like the Knicks, where it's a pretty much guaranteed win. Like, with or without you on the court, you're going to be fine. But you can't be missing primetime games against other contenders where come playoff time, Clippers aren't a lock at the top. They could be. There's a lot of good teams in the West, so every game really matters. So it might not seem like it now, but we could look back and say that games that they lost early in the year when Kawhi might have sat out to contenders, they could have a huge implement on seeding and what seed they end up getting and home court advantage and all that stuff. So I'm personally not a fan of it at all.
Me neither. Well, that is all the time we have for you guys here today. My name is Robert T. Felice.
And I'm Connor Hall.
And this has been MCTV Sports.